Now, back to our top story today. History will be made in Parliament later as King Charles delivers his first state opening of Parliament as monarch.
Well, criminal justice, a cigarette ban and minimum service levels for striking workers will all feature as part of the government's plans for the year ahead, in what many are calling a last chance for Rishi Sunak before the next general election. Well, political commentator Benedict Spence joins us now. Good morning, Benedict.
Good morning.
Do you see this raft of policies as being a bit of a last chance saloon for Sunak?
I mean, it is, basically. I mean, although we've been saying that for some time, that he's drinking in the last chance saloon. This might be last orders in the last chance saloons, but there is there is another budget coming down the road. But to be honest, this is going to be the last opportunity to sell a vision to the country and actually say, this is where we are and this is what we're going to improve on, and whether or not people are actually going to buy it. But I mean, the topics that you sort of touched upon, I don't think they really give the impression of some sort of a grand vision. They just seem to be vague ideas that they think poll quite well, that they've just sort of plucked out of the air and they've just sort of cobbled together and thought maybe enough people will vote for us based on these things. It's not looking particularly optimistic.
Could it be a lock-in at the last chance just to continue that if we can? Because that's what Rishi Sunak needs. He's setting some mood music. Much of this stuff will never become law if the next election is won by Labour anyway. There won't be time because there is a general election on the way. So is he trying to set a tone here? Which is tricky, of course, when you've been the government for 13 years.
That's the problem. And, you know, it's all very well saying, well, I wasn't Prime Minister for that period of time, but enough people are going to say, well, of course, you were the Chancellor, you voted for a lot of these people. It's tricky when you sort of look at, I mean, let's take crime, for example. There were some of the ideas about minimum tariffs, about, harsh sentences, people who commit particularly bad crimes staying in prison for longer, people being forced to face their victims in court. Well, that's all very well if you've got enough prison capacity. But we don't. And there is no real plan, as far as I can tell, to increase prison capacity, which means that if you're going to be putting violent criminals, particularly violent criminals, in prison for longer, that means somebody else is going to get let out earlier. And that is what we call low-level crime. But the problem is low-level crime isn't really low-level. It's burglaries, it's muggings, it's that sort of thing. So it actually means that lots of people who should be in prison for a very long time as well are going to get let out or not go to prison at all. And I think that that's broadly where a lot of people sit and look at this government and they think, and that's the issue over the past sort of 12, 13, 14 years, is a lack of, dare I say it, joined-up thinking, a lack of vision, a lack of strategy. As I say, all very well saying we're going to punish people really hard and going, but it's not really punishing the criminals if there aren't enough police officers because you cut the numbers and then you sort of put them back. It's not really punishing the criminals if only half of them get the really tough sentences and the others don't even get the sentences that they were initially going to be serving anyway. So that, I think, is the attitude a lot of people are taking. It does feel like a very desperate attempt to find ideas that will work very well. But people are not stupid. They look at it and they go, but this isn't, an all-encompassing set of policies.
What can they look back at over the previous 12 months and say, this has been a resounding success?
I mean, I suppose the only thing really that sort of stands out for me would be the small boats. Rishi Sunak said that he was going to reduce the numbers, and he has actually reduced the numbers. Now, whether or not that is him, or whether that is circumstantial,
the weather.
But he did say, well, exactly, but he did say that he was going to bring them down to what they were before he came in. And he has actually done that. I mean, most people will say it's not good enough, fine, but there has been some tangible progress. Inflation has come down, again, not actually necessarily something that he can control. No. Those are two things that have happened. I suppose, though, that the issue is you're sort of looking broadly at all the things that have happened on his watch. The strikes, they've been irritating, but they haven't sort of broken people's resolve in the government. People have sort of priced them in and just sort of gone, oh, well, the trains don't work, the NHS doesn't work, but these things weren't working properly anyway. It's just another thing to add to the sort of the list. So I think that that's the real issue, is that it's apathy, I think, from a lot of members of the public. They just sit there and go, well, yeah, you say you're going to change that, you say you're going to change this, but things haven't been going particularly well, and you say that you haven't been Prime Minister for the entirety of this period of time, but it is, you have been an MP, you have been in government with these people who are in your cabinet. It is still broadly the lot of you that are responsible. And
there is a difficulty as well, isn't it? If you're playing to a certain gallery, which, and all governments do this, of course, but it sounds very seductive to say, we've got an online harms bill, that kind of thing. But the reality is, what does that do for freedom of speech? Just stop the right to protest, etc. That's great. Crack down on people who are gluing their backside to the M25. We all support that. However, is it going to stop Gladys and her friends campaigning against pensions? The police will potentially in this new bill, get powers to enter people's homes without a warrant.
Well, wonderful. Great news. That's what everyone wants to hear.
Amazing if you get the right house, but if you get the wrong house, I mean, it's not North Korea, and this is the problem with this kind of electioneering to the gallery.
Everybody is just thrilled with the idea of the old bill being able to knock down their door because of a case of mistaken identity.
So I dream of this.
I'm growing a moustache. I could be anybody now. But that's the sort of thing. It's the idea that they're going to say that they're getting tough on crime, but what does that actually mean? And I think, broadly speaking, we've had the whole issue around the Palestine demonstrations and all that sort of thing, and now we've got talk about the police saying, well, we should be able to ban protests. We should be able to ban protests on this certain day. MPs rather saying that the police should be able to do it, and it is again one of those things where, okay, it sounds tough, it panders to a certain corner of the electorate, but what are the knock-on effects? The online harms bill as well, this thing that's been pushed relentlessly at people, but there will be knock-on effects, and that is, I think, what people dislike. There is a lack of long-term planning, a lack of long-term thought. The attitude of the government is, well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Correct.
We'll drop a bomb on that issue when we come to it. But for now, this is going to play really well with a load of people who are probably going to vote for us anyway.
How do you think all the pomp and ceremony will go down with the average British voter as well? Because ultimately this is it's a crown in a car, it's a golden carriage, it's a lot of money thrown at it.
It's a carriage.
I think...
The crown is in a car.
OK, all right.
Charles is in a carriage.
I think most people actually broadly... most people are in favour of the royal family. I think a lot of people quite like the quirkiness. I know that a lot of people will look at it and say, well, things aren't going particularly well, it's sort of slightly garish, but what are you going to do? You're going to melt down a carriage to pay for, what, half a day's worth of NHS treatment, which, everybody will miss their appointments for anyway.
Yeah.
We're going to get rid of the monarchy and have, what, Prime Minister?
I'd turn that carriage into an ambulance, is what I would do. It would arguably get there quicker, I think, if we were to use that.
Well, there is that. I would go anywhere in the back of one of those, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Benedict, thank you. Good to see you. Benedict Spence with us here on TalkTV.